Today, let's go through the top 5 mistakes when learning to handstand. So number 1, unrealistic line or unrealistic flexibility. So most people's vision or expectation when they start learning to handstand is that their handstand line is going to look something like this when they're practicing. Or if they're doing things against the wall, it's going to look like this. But in reality, most people's mobility, strength, conditioning actually means that their handstand should initially look more like this. And trying to force themselves into this line from this is actually making their handstand balance impossible. To understand this a little bit more, if you stand in this position, so to understand this a little bit more, if you just stand with your legs together, so squeeze your legs together, lock your knees, turn your glutes on, turn your abs on, now try and put your biceps to your ears in that position. Now try and look up towards your hands. Video this from the side and actually see what your position looks like, but also feel the amount of energy it takes to create that position. Most of us are too tight in the upper body, too tight in the hips. So when we try and put our arms above our head, our hips do this, our knees bend, we buckle, our arms bend, and it's a mission just to try and get the body into a straight line. So when practicing your handstand drills, allow yourself to have shoulders slightly forwards, arms a little bit bent, legs a little bit bent, even legs apart slightly. Now that's going to be dependent on the individual. It might look more like this, it might look like this, it might look like this, but you're going to have to find out where your comfortable position is, whether that's freestanding or against the wall. The next mistake is we're practicing the wrong progression or the wrong drill for our current ability. Now probably the most common one is your handstand practice looks like this. So it's just hundreds of repetitions of trying to kick up in the middle of the room, and there's no real quality time under tension where your body can learn. Instead, that person should be going against the wall, practicing clean kick-ups, pulling away from the wall, both from overbalance, so back to the wall, and chest to wall when they're ready, and practicing their underbalance. Now I say when ready, there is a prerequisite for this chest to wall position. We need to have the confidence to be able to do it. We need to have the condition and the strength to support yourself there, enter and exit. And normally to start with, we probably need a spotter standing here to give us some help. Then we have the other extreme, so the person that should be freestanding or practicing their freestanding handstand, and they're still using the wall way too much. Because this is safe, that's scary. So knowing how to use the wall to create balance and control and make it so we get very consistent in our balance window and we can show control there, and then knowing how to kick up with control in the middle of the room where it's safe, nice and slow, nice and controlled, on top of a strong base, if needed, with a spotter. But basically just working out a way where you can build confidence in a safe way where you're not going to hurt yourself or scare yourself and then get stuck on the wall for even longer. So I'd highly recommend you do some research, speak to a coach, whatever you need to do to find a line of progression. So basically know the beginner exercises and then the progressions that take you all the way through to that freestanding handstand. And then you can work out where your ability is. On a bad day, you can drop back slightly. On a good day, you can go up slightly and slowly work your way through those progressions. What we don't want to have is a big gap where you know what to do here, but there's a 6-month gap to this point. We need to know what those little increments are so you can slowly progress and don't get stuck in one place for too long. Number 3, let's look at the base. We need a very consistent, strong base. Exactly the same as our feet, our knees, our hips are controlling our balance. So I can do what I want to do with my upper body. We need to do exactly the same in the handstand. But when inverted, our base is our hands, our shoulders, and our focal point. So now I can throw my legs around and it's not taking over because my base is fully in control the whole time. So what we want to do is create a very strong, consistent base. Now, how do we do that? We need to work out the best base for our current level. So for me, my hands go somewhere here for handstands. If you're newer, you're probably going to have your hands a little bit wider to create that space for the mobility. We want to have the shoulders directly on top of the hands, and then we want to have our focal point looking down. To start with, it's really good practice to put something on the floor. So let's use this sucky sweep. I'm going to stick that down on the floor. Now that's somewhere between my thumb and index finger, I'm going to look down to that point all the time. And then my setup here wants to be exactly the same. So shoulders on top of the hands, strong focal point that doesn't move, hips nice and high for my flexibility. If I'm tight, I don't want to have my feet here. I also don't want to be back here. So I want to be in a nice stacked position with shoulders on top, strong focal point, and when I kick, notice those points stay exactly the same. When I come back down, they also stay exactly the same. Now that's whether I'm against the wall, if I'm kicking up, if I'm jumping up, if I'm freestanding, and everything in between. Consistency, every repetition, I make sure the hands are in the right place, I make sure the shoulders are in the right place, I make sure that focal point is the same. And if I change anything, it's a very conscious thing. So I go, okay, I want to change my focal point slowly, I'm going to move the sweetie a little bit closer or a little bit further away. But I only change that one thing. I don't want to change my hand position, my shoulder position, and my focal point all at the same time. And I definitely don't want to be changing it every repetition. Number 4, we want to be going up to handstand, not forwards or backwards. Now this is one of the reasons I prefer to teach the hand balancing way of doing handstands. So placing the base first, kicking up to handstand, as opposed to the gymnastic way. So kicking this way. What that's doing is it's sending energy that way. And unless you're very controlled with that and you kick up and show control and stop that movement, it's like a bounce into position to up. You're going to end up nearly always going forwards over or just under kicking. But see, the movement is forwards, not up. So ideally, the movement should always be up to handstand. So if I overdo it, I actually go too high, as opposed to overdoing it and going this way, I'm going to go over every time. Exactly the same as when we're doing the wall drills. We don't want to be coming from the wall this way. We want to be coming from the wall up into our handstand. So if I pull from the wall using the fingers, so here, so I make myself tall, push through the fingers, I go up to handstand. I'm not doing this. You can see there, I'm peeling myself off the wall into my underbalance. I'm just going to fall down. Exactly the same with the overbalance drill, not the overbalance drill, the underbalance drill. My shoulders come forwards till my toes just come off. Then I push up to my handstand. What I don't do is just keep going this way, and then I'm going to keep going and just fall towards overbalance. So whether we're jumping, pressing, kicking, whatever our entry is to handstand, we want to be going up. It's like getting out of a chair. We want to go up. We don't want to be leaning forwards. And then number 5, the biggie, inconsistent practice. Just think about how you learned to stand on your feet, how you learned to walk. You didn't do it once a week for half an hour. We was practicing it every day, probably nearly non-stop when we weren't eating, sleeping or pooping. And our bodies are designed to stand on our feet, not on our hands. So thinking you're going to learn to handstand with one half-an-hour session a week is unrealistic. And what most people do is they start off with once or twice a week. They start to make a little bit of progress. Maybe they go to 3 or 4 times per week. They make some very good progress. Then they take a month off for some reason and they drop back down again and they sort of get stuck at a certain level. If you really want to get good at handstands, it needs to be nearly a daily practice. The cool thing is you don't have to do it at a specific location. You can train anywhere and it can be 5 to 10 minutes a day or every other day. But I'd highly recommend, if you want to get good at handstands, if you want to take it all the way to something like a one-arm handstand, then you need to be practicing on a daily basis, or at least every other day, especially when you get to a certain level. Initially, you're probably fine to do it once or twice a week, then move to 3 or 4 times per week. And as the body gets used to it, you can increase up to 4 to 6 times per week. So those are the 5 most common mistakes that I see. Let me know if you know of any others down in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. If you like this video, please stick a thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're after coaching, check out my website or my app. Links are all down in the description, and I'll speak to you in the next one.